C. The nomad population. We turn now to a class of people whose origin is agricultural, but whose occupation is in great part industrial. They are the light infantry of capital, thrown by it, according to its needs, now to this point, now to that. When they're not on the march, they camp. Nomad labor is used for various operations of building and draining, brick making, lime burning, railway making, etc. A flying column of pestilence, it carries into the places in whose neighborhood it pitches its camp, smallpox, typhus, cholera, scarlet fever, etc. In undertakings that involve much capital outlay, such as railways, etc., the contractor himself generally provides his army with wooden huts and the like, thus improving villages without any sanitary provisions, outside of the control of the local boards, very profitable to the contractor, who exploits the laborers in twofold fashion, as soldiers of industry and as tenants. According as the wooden hut contains 1, 2, or 3 holes, its inhabitant, navvy, or whatever he may be, has to pay 1, 3, or 4 shillings weekly. One example will suffice. In September 1864, Dr. Simon reports that the chairman of the Nuisances Removal Committee of the parish of Sevenoaks sent the following denunciation to Sir George Grey, Home Secretary. Quote, "Smallpox cases were rarely heard of in this parish until about 12 months ago. Shortly before that time, the works for a railway from Lewisham to Tunbridge were commenced here, and in addition to the principal works being in the immediate neighborhood of this town, here was also established the depot for the whole of the works, so that a large number of persons was of necessity employed here. As cottage accommodation could not be obtained for them all, huts were built in several places along the line of the works by the contractor, Mr. J., for their especial occupation. These huts possessed no ventilation nor drainage, and besides were necessarily overcrowded, because each occupant had to accommodate lodgers, whatever the number in their own family might be, although there were only 2 rooms to each tenement. The consequences were, according to the medical report we received, that in the nighttime these poor people were compelled to endure all the horror of suffocation to avoid the pestiferous smells arising from the filthy, stagnant water and the privies close under their windows. Complaints were at length made to the Nuisances Removal Committee by a medical gentleman who had occasion to visit these huts, and he spoke of their condition as dwellings in the most severe terms, and he expressed his fears that some very serious consequence might ensue unless some sanitary measures were adopted. About a year ago, Mr. J. promised to appropriate a hut to which persons in his employ, who were suffering from contagious diseases, might at once be removed. He repeated that promise on the 23rd July last, but although since the date of the last promise there have been several cases of smallpox in his huts, and 2 deaths from the same disease, yet he has taken no steps whatever to carry out his promise. On the 9th September instant, Mr. Kelson, surgeon, reported to me further cases of smallpox in the same huts, and he described their condition as most disgraceful. I should add, for the Home Secretary's information, that an isolated house called the Pest House, which is set apart for parishioners who might be suffering from infectious diseases, has been continually occupied by such patients for many months past, and is also now occupied. That in one family 5 children died from smallpox and fever. That from the 1st April to the 1st September this year, a period of 5 months, there have been no fewer than 10 deaths from smallpox in the parish, 4 of them being in the huts already referred to. That it is impossible to ascertain the exact number of persons who have suffered from that disease, although they are known to be many, from the fact of the families keeping it as private as possible." Unquote. And there's a footnote. The relieving officer of the Chapel and Lafrith Union reported to the Registrar General as follows, quote, "At Doveholes, a number of small excavations have been made into a large hillock of lime ashes, the refuse of lime kilns, and which are used as dwellings, and occupied by laborers and others employed in the construction of a railway now in the course of construction through that neighborhood. The excavations are small and damp, and have no drains or privies about them, and not the slightest means of ventilation, except up a hole pulled through the top, and used for a chimney. In consequence of this defect, smallpox has been raging for some time, and some deaths amongst the troglodytes have been caused by it." Unquote. Back to the main text, and back to Marx. The laborers in coal and other mines belong to the best paid categories of the British proletariat. The price at which they buy their wages was shown on an earlier page. Footnote, the details given at the end of Part 4 refer especially to the laborers in coal mines. On the still worse condition in metal mines, see the very conscientious report of the Royal Commission of 1864. Back to the main text. Here I merely cast a hurried glance over the conditions of their dwellings. As a rule, the exploiter of a mine, whether its owner or his tenant, builds a number of cottages for his hands. They receive cottages and coal for firing, quote, for nothing, i.e., these form part of their wages, paid in kind. Those who are not lodged in this way receive in compensation £4 per annum. The mining districts attract with rapidity a large population, made up of the miners themselves, and the artisans, shopkeepers, etc., that group themselves around them. The ground rents are high, as they are generally where population is dense. The master tries, therefore, to run up, within the smallest space possible at the mouth of the pit, just so many cottages as are necessary to pack together his hands and their families. If new mines are opened in the neighborhood, or old ones are again set working, the pressure increases. In the construction of the cottages, only one point of view is of moment. The, quote, abstinence of the capitalist from all expenditure that is not absolutely unavoidable. Quoting the public health report, the lodging which is obtained by the pitman and other laborers connected with the collieries of Northumberland and Durham, says Dr. Julian Hunter, is perhaps on the whole the worst and the dearest of which any large specimens can be found in England, the similar parishes of Monmouthshire excepted. The extreme badness is in the high number of men found in one room, in the smallness of the ground plot on which a great number of houses are thrust, the want of water, the absence of privies, and the frequent placing of one house on the top of another, or distribution into flats. The lessee acts as if the whole colony were encamped, not resident. And another public health report, this time from a Dr. Stevens. In pursuance of my instructions, I visited most of the large colliery villages in the Durham Union. With very few exceptions, the general statement that no means are taken to secure the health of the inhabitants would be true of all of them. All colliers are bound, and Marx adds bound, an expression which, like bondage, dates from the age of serfdom, back to the quote, to the colliery lessee or owner for 12 months. If the colliers or coal workers express discontent, or in any way annoy the, quote, viewer, a mark of memorandum is made against their names. And at the annual binding, such men are turned off. It appears to me that no part of the truck system could be worse than what obtains in these densely populated districts. The collier is bound to take as part of his hiring a house surrounded with pestiferous influences. He cannot help himself, and it appears doubtful whether anyone else can help him except his proprietor. He is, to all intents and purposes, a serf, and his proprietor first consults his balance sheet, and the result is tolerably certain. The collier is also often supplied with water by the proprietor, which, whether it be good or bad, he has to pay for, or rather he suffers a deduction for from his wages, unquote. In conflict with so-called public opinion, or even with the officers of health, capital makes no difficulty about, quote, justifying the conditions, partly dangerous, partly degrading, to which it confines the working and domestic life of the laborer on the ground that they are necessary for profit. It is the same thing when capital, quote, abstains from protective measures against dangerous machinery in the factory, from appliances for ventilation and for safety in mines, etc. It is the same here with the housing of the miners. Dr. Simon, medical officer of the Privy Council, in his official report says, quote, in apology for the wretched household accommodation, it is alleged that miners are commonly worked on lease, that the duration of the lessee's interest, which in collieries is commonly for 21 years, is not so long that he should deem it worth his while to create good accommodation for his laborers, and for the tradespeople and others whom the work attracts, that even if he were disposed to act liberally in the matter, this disposition would commonly be defeated by his landlord's tendency to fix on him as ground rent an exorbitant additional charge for the privilege of having on the surface of the ground the decent and comfortable village which the laborers of the subterranean property ought to inhabit, and that prohibitory price, if not actual prohibition, equally excludes others who might desire to build. It would be foreign to the purpose of this report to enter upon any discussion of the merits of the above apology, nor here is it even needful to consider where it would be that, if decent accommodation were provided, the cost would eventually fall, whether on landlord, or lessee, or laborer, or public. But in presence of such shameful facts as are vouched for in the annexed reports, those of Dr. Hunter, Dr. Stevens, etc., a remedy may well be claimed. Claims of landlordship are being so used as to do great public wrong. The landlord, in his capacity of mine owner, invites an industrial colony to labor on his estate, and then in his capacity of surface owner, makes it impossible that the laborers whom he collects should find proper lodging where they must live. The lessee, and Marx adds the capitalist exploiter, meanwhile has no pecuniary motive for resisting that division of the bargain, well knowing that if its latter conditions be exorbitant, the consequences fall not on him, that his laborers, on whom they fall, have not education enough to know the value of their sanitary rights, that neither obscenest lodging nor foulest drinking water will be appreciable inducements towards a strike." Unquote.